I think Brian and Quagmire are the worst friends in cartoon history.
Good dog.
You son of a bitch!
Between their total disregard for boundaries and absolute lack of shame, it's tough to even call them friends in the traditional sense, but I guess friends by Family Guy standards makes more sense. It's probably easier to count the times they were good friends, but that wouldn't be half as fun now, would it? Their beef is so ironic, or at least Quagmire hating Brian is, when they are both horrible in very similar ways. The only difference is Quagmire is a horrible person who knows he's a horrible person. Brian is horrible and pretends not to be. He'd rather tell you what he thinks of other people he finds horrible and never comes down from his high horse. I think he's also a lot like Lois in that sense. There is very little to nothing about Quagmire that is redeemable, but at least he's honest about who and what he is. And it's so crazy because out of all the friends, those two are who Peter is closest to. Joe and Cleveland seems kind of like fill-ins. And don't get me wrong, Peter isn't the greatest friend either, but still, compared to these two, he seems like a cakewalk. Both Brian and Quagmire have, at different points, crossed one of the biggest boundaries possible. One by trying to sleep with their best friend's wife, and the other by trying to sleep with their best friend's daughter, and also wife. Brian and Quagmire have gradually switched roles over the years. In the world of friendship, they are immediate red flags, and crazy enough, it's not even the worst thing they've done. Welcome to the worst best friends in cartoon history. Brian wants to think that he is Peter's chill best buddy, always down for a drink at the Drunken Clam and full of pseudo-intellectual banter, but he is in reality the worst best friend. He's been obsessed with Lois for basically the entire show. Over the years, he's made countless awkward advances on her, and goes full Romeo and actually sings to Lois in a cringe-worthy serenade. Serious betrayal to Peter and uncomfortable to Lois. In one episode, he actively makes a move on Lois while she's away on a weekend trip with Peter. In what universe is it acceptable for a best friend to be like, oh hey, your spouse isn't paying enough attention to you, so I'm here to fill the void? This dude's idea of friendship is low-key, just creeping on his best friend's wife. Then there's Quagmire, the friend who thinks boundaries are just suggestions. Over the seasons, we see him interested in, let's just say, literally anyone with a pulse. But even Quagmire crosses a whole new line of gross when he develops a thing for Peter's daughter, Meg, as seen in the episode Meg and Quagmire. Sure, Meg is 18 in this episode, so technically it's legal, but that doesn't make it any less creepy. It's still Peter's daughter. Quagmire's shamelessness reaches a whole new level as he tries to seduce her, and Peter and Lois freaks out, rightfully so.
There you are, you son of a bitch!
You know your friend is trash when he's after your barely legal daughter. And in another episode, he gives her drugs knowing exactly what she was going to with it. So yeah, Brian wants Peter's wife, Quagmire wants Peter's daughter. It's genuinely hard to pick which is worse. And I can end the video here, honestly, but if we're looking at the broader friendship landscape, both Brian and Quagmire have repeatedly shown that loyalty is not their strong suit. A quick scroll through any fandom's page, you'll see, is Brian even a good friend to Peter? And Quagmire's the worst friend ever. Like there is an episode where instead of warning Chris and Stewie about his herpes, Brian becomes blood brothers with them. They get a lifelong disease as payment for their trust. He doesn't stop at just his best friend's family members either. He is supposedly the intellectual, the voice of reason. But let's not forget all the times he's been downright awful to Peter. For one, he has this annoying habit of constantly mocking Peter's intelligence and life choices. Sure, Peter isn't the brightest guy in the world, but when your best friend's default mode is make fun of you in a condescending tone, it doesn't exactly scream friendship goals. It's like Brian feels the need to remind Peter he's better than him, which is some serious narcissistic friend behavior. And then there's Brian's gambling problem. And Brian goes back to college, he actually causes Peter to lose out on a college degree. Peter has a chance to turn his life around, and Brian can't even let him have that moment without getting in the way. Fans on Reddit are quick to call Brian out for this. Imagine your best friend sabotaging one of the few self-improvement attempts you make in your life. Toxic? Much? I mean, he is the worst type of friend who thinks he's helping by making you feel like an idiot. And Quagmire isn't any better. He's not exactly the sensitive type, and he has about as much respect for Peter as he does for the law, so very little. In the episode Peter's Progress, Quagmire actually shows up just to laugh at Peter for failing to realize he's in a terrible situation. Reddit has field days with episodes like this, pointing out that Quagmire rarely supports Peter and is usually the first to mock or abandon him when he's down. He's that friend who sees you in trouble and just goes, sucks to be you, man. Then of course there's the episode The Cleveland Loretta Quagmire, where Quagmire sleeps with Cleveland's wife, Loretta. Sure, Peter's not directly involved, but think about it. If Quagmire's willing to betray Cleveland, what's stopping him from eventually doing the same to Peter? Fans on TikTok often bring this up, with takes like Quagmire betrayed Cleveland first, but Peter's next on the list. It's like Quagmire operates on a different set of rules where friends are just convenient people to ignore or exploit. When it comes down to loyalty, neither Brian nor Quagmire set the standard for ride or die friendship. In real life friendships, loyalty means standing by your friend, even if they make some questionable choices. But with these two, loyalty is only shown when it's convenient, if at all. I mean, let's face it, Brian's loyalty to Peter is questionable at best. Whenever Peter's in trouble, Brian is more likely to criticize him than help. Remember the episode Patriot Games, where Peter joins the Patriots football team? Instead of supporting Peter's new, albeit misguided, passion, Brian mocks him the entire time. Sure, Peter's an easy target, but a loyal friend might encourage him, or at least not rip on him every step of the way. Brian is only Peter's friend when it suits him, or when he wants free food, a place to crash, or a drinking buddy. He's only loyal to Peter as long as there's a reward for Brian. I can honestly go on and on. There is an episode where he hears about the conditions at Stewie's preschool. The kids were being neglected, given knives and rusty nails to play with, forced to go to the bathroom in cans on the ground, writing "Save us" in the blood of unconscious toddlers, and one is even kidnapped by a passerby. But just as Brian is about to intervene, he decides the teacher, Miss Emily, is attractive and tries to sleep with her, forgetting that his best friend's child is in literal danger. Quagmire is kind of the same, where he only shows up when it benefits him, and his loyalty comes with zero consistency. Quagmire might step up if there's a personal gain involved, but for the most part, he's just as likely to laugh at Peter's expense as he is to help. In "And Then There Were Fewer," he goes as far as accusing Peter of murder during a mansion mystery.
Look!
I mean, what kind of friend immediately suspects you're a killer? As fans on social media like to put it, Quagmire's version of friendship is being around when he's bored or needs something from you. Classic opportunistic friend behavior. It even had me thinking, who's the worst friend? In a head-to-head comparison, it almost feels like Quagmire edges out Brian by a hair in the absolute worst category. While Brian's pseudo-intellectualism and judgmental attitude make him a pretty poor friend, he's at least somewhat invested in Peter's life, however condescendingly. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think is the worst friend? Don't forget to also like and subscribe. Turn your post notifications on if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Until next time.